What's going on, everyone? So the Los Angeles Lakers are officially done with preseason and talked about it is waive season, right? All the teams are waiving their players as they gear up and get ready for the upcoming start of the regular season. So it's no surprise the Lakers are doing the same thing. There's several players that I'd love to see the Lakers pick up, bring on the G League team, right? Because you got to keep in mind, the Lakers cannot sign anybody to the main roster without a trade. It doesn't mean, some of these kind of young players that end up getting waived, from other teams to, clear the roster spots needed to be at 15, 14, whatever, right? Lakers could maybe bring in a couple of those guys. Plus, they have several of their own that they just waived that they can, bring down to the G League team. You run some risks, and we'll get into that here in a moment. But again, it's that time of the year. Lakers play their first regular season game on Tuesday, the 21st, against the Golden State Warriors. I'm excited for it. I'm looking forward to it, and we need to get that win. But now that the Lakers have cleared what they needed to, we saw and got reports that the Los Angeles Lakers announced they have waived R.J. Davis, Augustus Marciulionis, Anton Watson, and Nate Williams. So those are the guys that they carried into training camp, and of course, none of those guys were going to make the main roster. We knew none of them were going to make the main roster because, again, the Lakers have to make a trade in order for any of those guys to make the main roster. And then, we never got to see Chris Minnan, who was on a two-way, as well as Nick Smith Jr., who I thought showed some real promise, and he's incredibly young. So he's on our two-way, and then obviously Christian Koloko. So all of these guys now get waived and are likely going to make their way to the G League team. But here's the thing. Now, one, this was all expected. We knew that these guys were going to be waived at some point. You saw the Lakers waive several guys already and kind of do the carousel of, signing a guy and then waiving a guy, then signing a guy and waiving a guy, just because they wanted to, be able to maintain all their rights. So the Lakers would have all these guys' rights to the G League, so they can now, kind of build and shape their G League team, create that farm system that the Lakers are really trying to create. You saw R.J. Davis and how well he played. We didn't get to look at Augustus Marciulionis because he was dealing with an injury. Anton Watson, we got small sample size with. We didn't really get to see a ton of him. He did get some minutes, but it was very limited. And then Nate Williams, I thought actually did a really good job and looked like a guy that could just be a quality kind of role guy, right? Like, think of what Jordan Goodwin was for us. It's kind of how I viewed Nate Williams, right? Just a guy that can get out there. He's also bigger, but he is a little more experienced, 26 years old. So again, this just gives the Lakers guys that they can bring under their umbrella, that can kind of grow and develop with the team, get some chances. But what this also means is the Lakers could lose any of these guys, right? R.J. Davis, for example, was really good, right? We all were very impressed with him. He looked like a guy that I could see maybe replacing a Gabe Vincent at some point. Or, Gabe Vincent's now in the starting unit. Well, maybe at some point you bring R.J. Davis in if you end up keeping a Gabe Vincent long-term. Now, R.J. Davis can slot in to the starting one, the backup one. Be that kind of guy off the bench for you, be that hustle, two-way kind of guy. He showed the ability to be a three-level scorer, kind of, pesky on defense, little tenacious, right? Like those kind of things you like to see. But all the other teams all saw the same thing. And, I've seen people throw out, reminds me of Scottie Pippen Jr. Well, we saw what happened with that. Scottie Pippen Jr. goes, Memphis ends up grabbing him, which, again, I don't think he would have been what he was for Memphis or what he is for Memphis, which he's actually he's going to miss 12 weeks, I believe it is, with the toe injury, I think. But point is that he's a guy that ended up going to Memphis, and he kind of exploded onto the scene because he got the minutes and opportunity. Memphis was tanking that year. That was the year that Ja was suspended, and then everyone kind of got hurt. So it was just kind of like, just go out there. Like him and Jay Huff were really good. And everyone was like, why weren't they like that for the Lakers? And it's like, because Lakers aren't bottoming out. They're letting those guys play 40 minutes a night, and just the games that they're great, of course, we hear about it. But we're not hearing the games that, he's laying absolute duds and has 2 points and is 1 of 11 from the field and, has 8 turnovers and all. We're not hearing about those games. We're hearing about the games where he's great and phenomenal and all that stuff. And wow, he put up 28-8 last game. And it's like, why couldn't he have been on the Lakers? Why didn't, Darvin Ham let him play or whatever, right? Part of it, I think, is that part of it is the Lakers have not been really a development team over the years. And part of it is, again, just opportunity, right? So RJ Davis, he could be one of those stories where Laker fans are going to be upset if he ends up going to a team and ends up balling out and gets the opportunity. Because just like the Lakers and us fans all saw him play very well, there's other organizations that are looking at it going like, hey, that's a guy that we could bring in on our roster that could make a difference and can make an impact and, be a rotation guy in a year or two. So let's bring him in on our two-way, right? Because he'd rather be on our two-way than being on the G League team because at least he gets NBA reps and stuff. Or, you get a team that has a main roster spot and they're like, hey, you know what we could use? Another guard, right? Let's bring him in, bring him off the bench because there are several teams that could use a guard. So keep an eye on guys like RJ Davis. Nate Williams, I'm not too worried about losing him because he's 26, so I don't think teams are going to rush to the door to necessarily get him. And like I said, he looked like a good dirty work guy, but yeah, you can find those kind of guys. I'd like to give Nate Williams the shot. Thought he played well. Again, it's just like that hustle guy. Had some turnovers, had some good defensive stances, but he's getting older. Right, so teams usually kind of stay away from that. Most teams would rather have a guy that maybe is not as good of a hustle guy, but shows the signs and he's 21, or 22. Right? Like most teams would rather go that route than the guy who, is already supposed to be beginning in his prime. But we've seen lots of guys kind of really emerge onto the scene later in the year. I mean, even Jordan Goodwin was, later in his years and became a quality player. And now he just ended up getting, a continued opportunity with the Phoenix Suns, right? They just waived Butler, which is crazy because Butler just dropped 34 on the Lakers or 35 on the Lakers in 34 minutes, I think it was, with 9 assists, nearly a triple-double. So, again, it's cold world, right? Even colder league, but Nate Williams is a guy that I'm not too worried about. I think he'll be fine. Same thing with Augustas Marciulionis, right? Augustas Marciulionis, he's kind of more of a traditional point guard, right? You think of like a TJ McConnell. He's not really a great three-point shooter, but he's a guy that's really good at just kind of, creating that dribble penetration, kind of getting to his spots, operating in the mid-range. On top of operating in the mid-range, he's a guy that can make plays, kind of run the pick and roll, run the basics. He's a guy that you can trust to run the offense. So he's a guy that if you needed kind of a playmaker in a year or two, right, or say, let's say you end up trading Austin Reeves next season, sign and trade Austin Reeves. And it's like, you know what? We could use another kind of ball handler, real playmaker, a guy that can kind of put all the pieces together for us when Luka's not on the court. Augustas Marciulionis could potentially be that kind of guy. We didn't really get to see him very much. We saw him in the regular season and he looked not the regular season, Summer League. And he looked the part in the limited time that he got. But it would have been nice to see him in the in the preseason and see does him and DeAndre Ayton, can they kind of develop a little bit of a connection? How is that two-man game? Is he able to kind of run that pick and roll with him, kind of create that collapse the defense, throw up the lob threat, pick teams apart, stuff like that, kind of play that role at an NBA level? Because he's a guy that took a chance on the Lakers. There's some other teams that actually wanted him. It was very similar to an Austin Reeves scenario where it was like, I can go to the Lakers, kind of use the big brand, the big spotlight, and if I play well, I can get the opportunity, and then ended up getting hurt. So he ended up not getting the opportunity that he was looking to get. So it'll be kind of interesting to see, does he kind of stick around and then try again next season, right? Hey, I'll just stay on the Lakers G League team, show what I can do with the G League team, and then maybe I can move up into the main roster next season, or maybe move up to a two-way spot at some point. If a Nick Smith or Chris Menon, if one of those guys end up going to the main team, then I can jump into a two-way, and kind of grow amongst it. And then last up would be Anton Watson. Again, another guy that I'm not really too concerned of teams trying to swoop him up. However, he is 6'8", 6'9", right? So he is long, lengthy, versatile, got athleticism, right? He's kind of, a potential two-way guy for the right team in the right situation. So I think he's a little more likely than some of the others, right? I think he's a little more likely than, say a Marcelonis or a Nate Williams or something like that. But it's not something that I would be overly concerned. And again, we didn't really get a ton of sample size on him to know, like, okay, this is the guy that can be a rotation piece and play a significant role and, be a two-way guy for us. He's already 25. He just turned 25, to be fair, on October 6th, but still, he's already 25. So it's like, you didn't give him much running, give him much opportunity when he did get minutes. He didn't look terrible, but he didn't really do anything. You know what I mean? Because again, it's like, it's hard to do something when you're only playing a minute and a half, right? Like, it's the end of the game and it's like, all right, just go in for garbage time. It's like, you're just kind of hoping that maybe, the ball rolls your way a couple times and you just jack up shots or something like that, right? And maybe get hot and show that you can do it. So again, the only guys that I'm really concerned about potentially losing is RJ Davis, because he did get the minutes, he did get the opportunity, and he looked good, right? So I could see a team maybe potentially coming in, bringing him on, grabbing him at some point, and just kind of going like, hey, let's see what he could do on our main roster or on our two-way spot or whatever, right? Kind of, add them to the team. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. What do you think? I feel, what are your thoughts? Any of these guys, are you worried about losing? Are you kind of like, RJ Davis, I do want to say, he kind of feels like every year we have that guy. Like, literally, every year, it's, Quincy Olivari, Blake Henson, right? Like, every year there's that guy that's like, Scottie Pippen, right? That guy that's like, oh, he looked really good. And, sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. Yeah, we'll see. It's not something that I'm like, if the Lakers lose out on RJ Davis, I think it's fine, right? He's 6 foot, 6'1", if that, right? Like, I'd like to kind of keep the size, keep the height, but again, he didn't look bad. I'm not saying like, oh, if you can't get him, don't, right? Like, if he can kind of work his way onto the roster, sure, beautiful, right? I'm all for it. I'm rooting for his success, but I don't think it's something that's like, oh, what are the Lakers doing type thing. But anyway, again, how do you feel? Either way, I'd love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out. So we enjoy these types of videos. Truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.